Welcome to the Kindness Extremist podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa. I've spoken to tens of thousands of people all over the world about the importance of kindness. And I am obsessed with how we can bring more kindness into our daily lives and restore balance to a deeply unbalanced world. Every episode, I'll give you 3 practical strategies to create a kinder world, and I'll do it in 30 minutes or less. No fluff, just valuable, actionable content that you can implement in your life immediately after listening to help you actively create a kinder world. There's no time to waste. Let's dive in. Welcome back, my friend. It's an honor that you're here for episode 12 of the Kindness Extremist podcast. Today, we're talking about one of the most empowering truths I've ever discovered. You have more control than you think. I know that might sound hard to believe in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and divided, but stick with me on this. Here's what inspired today's episode. I keep meeting people who feel helpless. They see problems everywhere: workplace toxicity, political division, social media hatred, violence in their communities, and they've convinced themselves that they're powerless to make a difference. They're waiting for someone else to step up, someone more qualified, someone more connected, someone who's more equipped to fix what's broken. But here's the truth that changed my life. The hero in the story isn't some mythical figure who's going to swoop in and save us all. The hero is the person staring back at you in the bathroom mirror. In one of the most infamous stories of people failing to step up and take necessary action, on March 13th, 1964, 38 people watched Kitty Genovese get brutally attacked outside of her apartment building in New York City. Not one person helped because each assumed that someone else would step in and save the day. Kitty died that night, a death that could have been prevented if just one person had taken action. This is called the bystander effect, and it's happening in our society right now on a massive scale. We're all waiting for someone else to create the change we desperately want to see. That's why it's so important for us to lock in on the 3 things that we have the power to control. Specifically, our actions, the things we choose to do, our effort, how hard we choose to try, and 3, our attitude, our habitual way of thinking. In today's episode, I'll share with you 3 practical strategies to take control of these 3 things so we can get off the sidelines and actively create a kinder world. First, we'll explore how to harness the power of our actions no matter how small they seem. Secondly, I'll show you how we can give our fullest effort without burning ourselves out. And finally, we'll tackle how to maintain a helpful attitude even when everything around us feels hopeless. Whether you're feeling powerless in your workplace, overwhelmed by global problems, or convinced that your voice doesn't matter, this episode will show you how to reclaim your agency and to become the change that you want to see in this world. Let's discover the hero in the mirror together and convince that person to get off the sidelines and to get into the game of creating a kinder world. For the first kindness strategy of the episode, let's lock in on the first and most powerful controllable in our lives: our actions. In a world of 8 billion with a B, 8 billion people, you might think that your individual actions don't matter. I'm here to tell you that's absolutely and categorically wrong. Let me share a personal story. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always had the habit of picking up litter on the ground whenever I see it. Nothing special, just grabbing trash and putting it in nearby trash cans. Will this single-handedly solve environmental pollution? Of course not. But I've handled what was within my capacity to change, and I've made the world a tiny bit better through my actions. More importantly, we don't know how these small actions might inspire others. Recently, a woman approached me after a speaking event and said, "I saw you pick up that coffee cup in the hotel lobby earlier. It reminded me that I can also do small things to make a difference too. Thanks for walking the talk." One small action created a ripple effect I never even knew about. This is the power of what I call meaningful micro actions, small, consistent behaviors that seem insignificant, but can collectively create massive, massive change. Think about this. Every social movement in history started with individuals taking small actions that inspired others to do the same. Rosa Parks didn't set out to change the entire civil rights movement when she refused to give up her bus seat. She simply took one action that aligned with her values, but that single action sparked a movement that transformed our nation. So, how do we harness the power of our actions? Let me give you 3 straightforward principles. First, reject the all or nothing mindset. I constantly hear people say, "What's the point of recycling one bottle when corporations are destroying the environment?" Or, Why should I be kind to one person when there's so much hate in the world? That would be like saying, what's the point in showering? We're only going to get dirty again. This thinking is not only counterproductive, but it's also paralyzing. You don't need to solve entire global problems to make a meaningful difference. Second, start where you are with what you have. You don't need special qualifications, unlimited resources, or perfect circumstances to take positive action. When I started speaking about workplace civility, I had no credentials, no platform, and no idea what in the hell I was doing. I just knew that I survived a toxic workplace that nearly killed me, and I wanted to help others avoid that same fate. It started with one blog post. That's it, one blog post. One action then led to another, which led to books, which led to speaking engagements, and eventually this podcast. Third, ask yourself one simple question daily. Is there action I can take right now to make the situation better? Notice, I didn't ask if you can solve the entire problem. Just make it a little bit better. Maybe it's speaking up when you witness bullying. Maybe it's checking in on a colleague who seems to be struggling. Maybe it's volunteering for 1 hour at a local charity. The key is taking some action rather than no action. Here's what I've learned. Our brains are wired to focus on what we can't control, which makes us feel helpless. But when we shift our focus to what we actually can control, and one of those things are our actions, we immediately feel more empowered and ideally more helpful. Let me give you some examples of powerful micro actions that you can take this week after listening to this episode. In your workplace, thank someone publicly for their contributions. Address one small problem that's been bothering everyone. Offer to help a struggling colleague. In your community, pick up litter during your walk. Hold the door for someone. Smile. Make eye contact with people you pass. In your family, put away your phone during dinner. Ask someone about their day and actually listen. Express gratitude for something specific that they did. Or online, share something uplifting instead of something outrageous. Compliment someone instead of arguing with them. Unfollow accounts that make you angry and follow the ones that inspire you. These actions might seem small, but they create what I call a ripple effect of kindness. Every kind action increases the likelihood that the recipient will be kind to someone else. Every time you model respectful behavior, you make it easier for others to do the same. So here's your first kindness strategy of the episode. This week, commit to taking one small positive action every day. It doesn't have to be the same action, just one intentional act that makes the world a tiny bit better. Keep a list in your phone of these actions and notice how taking control of this one thing makes you feel more empowered overall. Remember, you're not trying to save the world in a week. You're simply proving to yourself that you have agency, that your actions matter, that you're not helpless unless you're unconscious or you're dead. This is the foundation of everything we're going to be discussing in this episode. The power is in your hands. The question, my friend, is what will you do with it? Now, let's talk about the second kind of strategy and the second controllable, how you show up with your effort. Let me keep it real with you about something. Effort is subjective, but we always know when we're not giving our best. During the pandemic, when I was home with my elementary school-aged daughters, I was tasked with running my speaking business, pulling together a bootleg version of Zoom homeschool, and of course, parenting my baby girls. Like most parents during the pandemic, that was an absolutely miserable experience. Some days I was able to wake up, get in a solid workout before they woke up, make a fabulous breakfast for them and for myself, attentively help them with their schoolwork throughout the day, and still remain responsive to my business clients. On other days, all I could muster was the energy to give my girls cereal for all 3 meals while telling them to Google the answers to their schoolwork. Here's the thing though, from a purely objective standpoint, you could argue that my effort on the first day that I just described was better. But here's what I learned. While the outcome might have been better, I know in my heart that I gave my best effort on both of those days that I just described. This is crucial to understand because one of the biggest barriers to taking control of our lives is perfectionism. We think that if we can't give 100% of the effort all the time, that we shouldn't try at all. This all or nothing thinking paralyzes us and keeps us in the victim mindset. Some days, our best effort on a scale of 1 to 10 may be a 10. On other days, it might be a 6. True empowerment comes from understanding what I call right-sized effort. It means giving the best you can with what you have in any given moment, while being honest about when you could do more. Let me share with you a story that illustrates this perfectly. Many years ago, I met a woman who I'll call Sarah, who was a single mother, working in a demanding job, and was also going to school part-time. She came to one of my workshops and said, "Shola, I hear what you're saying about making the world better, but I'm barely surviving. I don't have the bandwidth to save for anything else." I asked her one question that changed her perspective. "Sarah, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much effort are you putting into surviving right now?" She stopped for a moment and said, "Probably a 9. I'm doing almost everything I can with the resources that I have." I said, "That's incredible effort, Sarah," I told her. "Now, is there anything, even something tiny, that you could do to make someone else's day a little bit brighter without taking anything away from that 9? Her face lit up. "Actually, yeah. When I'm at the coffee shop studying, I could compliment the barista or hold the door for other customers. That wouldn't cost me a thing." That's right size effort. Sarah wasn't trying to volunteer at 3 nonprofits or organize community rallies. She was just looking for ways to contribute that matched her current capacity. Here's the other side of this coin. Sometimes we're not giving our fullest effort, and deep down, we know it. I call this comfortable complacency. When we have more to give, but we're choosing not to because it's easier to complain than to take action. How do you know the difference between right size effort and comfortable complacency? Ask yourself these 3 questions. First, given my current circumstances, am I doing everything that I realistically can? This accounts for your health, family responsibilities, work demands, and any other legitimate constraints. Be honest, but also be fair to yourself. Second, what am I choosing to do instead of taking positive action? If you're spending 3 hours a day scrolling social media but claim that you don't have the time to make a difference, you might be in comfortable complacency. If you're using that time to care for aging parents or you're working a second job to pay rent, you're probably giving what I would call right-sized effort. And third, if my children or someone I deeply love were depending on me to act, would I find a way to do more? Sometimes this question reveals our reserves of energy and time that we didn't know that we had. Now, let me address something important: sustainable effort versus burnout culture. I absolutely despise hustle culture and the "I'll sleep when I'm dead" nonsense that ironically will ensure that becoming dead happens sooner rather than later. That's not helpful to you or to anyone else. What I'm talking about is honest effort, the kind that aligns with your values and with your capacity. Here's a framework that I use called the energy audit. At the end of each day, ask yourself, where did my energy go today? How much of that energy went towards things that align with my values? How much went toward things that don't really matter to me? What would I change about how I spent my energy if I could do today completely over? My friend, this is not about perfection. This is about awareness. When you become conscious of how you're spending your energy, you can make more intentional choices about your effort. Let me give you a personal example. I used to get sucked into political arguments on social media, which I mentioned in episode 4 of this podcast. I'd spend hours crafting responses to strangers who would never change their mind anyway. When I did my energy audit, I realized I was putting enormous effort into something that didn't align with my values or create any positive change. So I redirected that effort. Instead of arguing with trolls online, I put that same energy into recording this podcast, creating content that could actually help people. Same amount of effort, dramatically different impact. This brings me to the concept of multiplying our effort. Sometimes working smarter, not just harder, is what's needed. Instead of trying to change one mind at a time through individual conversations, I'm reaching thousands of people through this podcast, which is super cool. That's not to say individual conversations don't matter. They obviously do, but it's about being strategic with your finite energy. Here are 4 practical ways to optimize your effort. First, identify your effort drains, activities that consume your energy without creating any meaningful results. For most people, these include excessive social media scrolling, watching too much cable news, gossiping, or engaging in unproductive arguments. Second, identify your effort multipliers, activities where a small amount of energy creates disproportionate positive impact. This might include mentoring someone, creating content that helps others, volunteering in your area of expertise, or having one meaningful conversation instead of 10 superficial ones. Third, align your effort with your natural rhythms. If you're a morning person, use that peak energy for your most important contributions. If you're a night owl, don't force yourself to volunteer at 6 a.m. events. Here's your second kindness takeaway of the episode. Conduct an honest effort audit this week. Track where your energy goes for 3 days. Then identify one effort drain that you can eliminate and one effort multiplier that you can add. The goal isn't to completely overhaul your life. It's to make just one intentional shift that better aligns your effort with your values. Remember, the question isn't whether you're giving perfect effort. The question is whether you're giving honest effort, the best you can with what you have right now. Your effort is one of the few things in this world that belongs entirely to you. No one can take it away. No one can force you to give it, and no one can give it for you. That's what makes our effort incredibly powerful. Now let's explore the third controllable, your attitude. Hey, fellow kindness extremists, it's me, Shola. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, if you're mowing what I'm growing, if you're smelling what I'm stepping in. Okay, I'll stop. If you're enjoying what you're listening to so far, I would love it if you would take a moment to hit the subscribe button and leave a rating and a review. Those incredibly kind acts go so far in helping me to reach as many people as possible who will join the movement to actively create a kinder world. I appreciate you so much, my friend. Okay, let's get back to the episode. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, spent 3 years in Nazi concentration camps. He lost his pregnant wife, his parents, and nearly his own life due to unimaginable cruelty. Yet he wrote something that changed my understanding of human resilience. I actually want to read this because I want to get this right. He said, quote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." End quote. If someone can maintain agency over their attitude in a Nazi concentration camp, surely we can do the same in our daily challenges, yeah? But let's be real. Controlling our attitude is often the hardest of the three controllables because our emotions feel so automatic and so overwhelming. I used to think attitude was just about staying positive, which felt both impossible and annoying when dealing with real problems. Then, thankfully, I learned that attitude isn't about forced positivity. It's about conscious perspective. It's about how we frame what's happening to us and around us. Let me share a story that illustrates this. A few years ago, I was stuck in an airport for 8 hours due to weather delays. Everyone around me was furious, arguing with gate agents, complaining loudly to the airline. I felt my own frustration rising until I caught myself and thought, wait, I can't control the weather or the delay, but I can control how I respond to this particular situation. I decided to reframe the experience. So instead of 8 hours of torture in an airport, this was 8 hours uninterrupted to work on my book. I found a quiet corner, put on my noise-canceling headphones, and had one of my most productive writing sessions ever. Same situation, completely different experience, simply because I chose a different attitude. This is what I call perspective shifting, the ability to reframe challenging situations in ways that better serve us. It's not about pretending problems don't exist or forcing fake happiness. It's about asking better questions. Instead of, why is this happening to me? Ask, what can I learn from this? Instead of, this is terrible. Ask, how might this help me grow? Instead of, I'm powerless. Ask, what aspect of this can I influence? Now, let me address something important. I addressed this in episode 5 of this podcast, but it's worth mentioning again and again and again. I am not talking about toxic positivity. If someone has just experienced trauma or a loss, the last thing they need is someone telling them to look on the bright side. There are times when we need to sit with difficult emotions, process grief, and acknowledge that some situations just genuinely suck. What I'm talking about is what happens after we've honored those feelings. Once we've grieved, once we've felt our anger or processed our disappointment, we get to choose. Do we stay stuck in an emotional state, or do we shift towards something more empowering? This brings me to one of my all-time favorite tools. It's called the 6 in 6 rule. When something is bothering you, ask yourself, will this situation likely have a large impact on my life 6 months from now? If the answer is no, do not give yourself any more than 6 minutes of your time to think about it. If the answer is yes, however, focus your energy on what you can control about it. This rule has saved my sanity countless times. I used to get worked up about every negative comment on social media, every minor inconvenience in every traffic jam, which is hilarious because I live in Los Angeles and I get in a lot of traffic jams living here. The 6 in 6 rule thankfully helped me to realize I was wasting an enormous amount of mental energy on things that didn't truly matter in the long run. Let me give you 3 practical strategies for taking control of your attitude. First, Practice gratitude anchoring. When you catch yourself spiraling into negativity, immediately identify 3 things you're grateful for in that moment. They don't have to be big things. Maybe you're grateful for the coffee you're drinking, or for having a roof over your head, or from a text from a friend. This is not about dismissing your problems. It's about creating balance in your perspective. Second, use my favorite tool, cognitive reframing, which I mentioned more detail in episode 5. This is the practice of looking at situations from different angles. If you're stuck in traffic, instead of focusing on being late, you could focus on having extra time to listen to a podcast, like this one, or you could call a friend. If you didn't get the promotion you wanted, instead of focusing on rejection, you could focus on what you learned about areas for growth for the next time. Third, apply the 6 in 6 rule. When facing a setback or disappointment, ask yourself, will this likely matter to me 6 months from now? If yes, then focus on what is within your control, namely your actions, your effort, and your attitude to make it better. Most of the time, though, the answer is no. And if so, only give yourself 6 minutes to vent about it before moving on. Like, for real, set a timer on your phone and then feel free to unload for those 6 minutes. This doesn't minimize your current feelings, but it helps to put things in the proper perspective. Here's something crucial to understand. Your attitude doesn't just affect you, it's contagious. Research shows that emotions spread through groups like viruses, so when you choose a constructive attitude, you make it easier for others around you to do the same. However, when you choose negativity and helplessness, you spread that too. I see this all the time in my workplace consultations. There's always one person who walks into the office complaining about everything: the weather, the coffee, the workload, the management. Within an hour, the entire team's energy has shifted downward. But I've also seen the opposite. One person who consistently approaches challenges with a solution-focused attitude that can transform an entire team's culture. This is why controlling your attitude isn't just personal development, it's a form of leadership. Every time you choose a constructive perspective in the face of challenges, you're modeling what's possible for others. Let me address one more incredibly important thing. What do you do when your attitude feels completely out of control? Sometimes we're dealing with clinical depression or anxiety or trauma that makes attitude control feel impossible. If that's you, please know that seeking professional help is not a failure. It's a form of taking control. Whether it's therapy, medication, or other interventions, all these things can be tools that you may need to reclaim your agency over your attitude. So here's your third practical kindness takeaway of the episode. This week, catch yourself in 3 moments when your attitude is heading in an unhelpful direction. In each moment, pause and ask yourself, is this attitude serving me or is it harming me? Then consciously choose one small shift in perspective. Maybe it's using the 6 in 6 rule, or finding something to be grateful for, or reframing the situation. Write down what you notice about these small attitude shifts and how it affects your day. Remember, you can't control what happens to you, but you can always control what you make it mean. You can't control other people's behaviors, but you can control how much power you give it over your emotional state. You can't control the world's problems, but you can control whether you approach them with despair or with determination. Your attitude is the lens through which you see everything. Make sure it's a lens that empowers you rather than a lens that defeats you. We've covered a lot of ground today, my friend. Let's recap our 3 kindness strategies for taking control when the world feels out of control. 1, harness the power of your actions through meaningful micro actions. You don't need to solve global problems to make a meaningful difference. Start with where you are with what you have. Secondly, give honest effort that aligns with your capacity. Focus on right-sized effort rather than perfectionism, and redirect your energy from effort drains to effort multipliers. And third, choose constructive attitudes through conscious perspective shifting. Use tools like the 6 in 6 rule and cognitive reframing to maintain agency over your mental state. As we close, I want you to remember this truth. In a world of 8 billion people, countless global challenges right now, and forces far beyond our individual influence, there are exactly 3 things you will always have control over: your actions, your effort, and your attitude. That might not seem like much, but in reality, it's everything. Every social movement, every positive change, every transformation in human history started with individuals who decided to take control of these 3 things. They didn't wait for perfect circumstances or unlimited power. They just simply started where they were and did what they could. The hero in the story isn't coming from somewhere else. The hero is already here. The hero, my friend, is you. You have more power than you realize, more influence than you know, and you have more control than you think. The question isn't whether you can make a difference. The question is what kind of difference you'll choose to make. This is your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa, and you now know that kindness can't be weak because you just experienced the strength of the Kindness Extremist podcast. Until next time, my friend, the journey to a kinder world continues. Thank you for listening to the Kindness Extremist podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I have one favor to ask of you. If you could kindly hit the subscribe button, leave a rating and a review, not only would that be incredibly kind, but by doing so, you're actively playing a role in growing this movement and ideally getting us one step closer to creating a kinder world. I hope to see you next week for another episode of the Kindness Extremist podcast. Bye for now.